the latest technology to free Willy 2. Walt Conti and his team are freeing filmmakers, providing water-going creatures capable of performing the most demanding scenes. The space-age science and months of effort will become invisible. What will remain are three very believable orcas who look perfectly at home as they swim across the screen. Coming up, we'll meet the men whose effects work on Jaws helped scare a whole generation of filmgoers out of the water.
I think they're just curious, don't you, Father?
Well, I hope so.
A key scene in MGM's 1932 production of Tarzan the Ape Man called for an angry pod of hippopotami. 30 of the huge animals were let loose into Lake Sherwood, a short distance from the studio, and the cameras rolled. But the filmmakers had neglected to note one important fact. Hippos can hold their breath for up to 6 minutes, resulting in several thousand feet of film of a very placid Lake Sherwood. Fortunately, MGM had one of the best special effects departments in town, headed by A. Arnold Gillespie. Buddy, as he was known in the business, would go on to have one of the most remarkable careers in the history of visual effects, receiving 4 Academy Awards and supervising work on more than 300 films, from Wizard of Oz to Ben-Hur. To save the day for Tarzan, Buddy was called upon to quickly build artificial hippos, which he describes in his memoirs.
Each was fastened to a long cable which passed through a weight-anchored pulley on the bottom and stretched several hundred feet to teams of horses, who, upon commands of back up, giddy up, and whoa, gave our hippos very lifelike submergings and surfacings.
Getting nervous, kid?
No, not a bit.
2 decades later, movie audiences marveled at a much more complex aqua animatronic creature. The giant squid from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was created by Robert Matty, who supervised mechanical effects at Disney for 18 years. But it was actually after his retirement that Matty would work on his most famous sea creature. He was approached by production designer Joe Alves, who had completed conceptual drawings for a film about a 25-foot great white shark, Jaws.
Everyone was telling me it can't be done. And so when I met Bob, I didn't get the usual pessimistic attitude that you can't do this, you can't make this full, size shark and you shoot in the real ocean. And instead, I got this very enthusiastic, yes, we could do anything.
After studying Alves' storyboards, illustrating the shots desired by director Steven Spielberg, Matty decided he would need to build 2 distinct rigs. The sea sled shark was pulled through the water by a motorboat. The more complicated platform shark rig was a submersible 60-foot-long track, on top of which rode a crane and pivot arm, holding one of 3 interchangeable sharks. Matty designed these with different openings, enabling him to get inside for maintenance of the pneumatic hoses and air rams that moved the fins, tail, mouth, and eyes. During filming off Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, the shark crew operated the pneumatic controls from an anchored barge. While Matty's basic engineering was sound, deterioration of the submerged mechanics from salt water played havoc with the production schedule.
We would test it, it would work. So when we would bring everyone out, the producers, directors, and say, now look at it, we got it to work. That period of time that it was sitting there, little things were eating away at it, and it wouldn't work. So, go back again to the production office, and I said, I'm sorry, we'll try again, and that's the way it went.
When the sharks did work, these enormous machines of steel and rubber turned into a terrifying nemesis for star Roy Scheider.
The mechanical sharks they built for Jaws were as good as anything that had ever been done for films up to that point. I mean, that was pretty extraordinary, that everything worked. The mouth worked, the eyes worked. It looked like it swam, it turned, it did everything. It was fabulous.
Walt Conti, who was still in high school when Jaws broke every box office record for its time, is now on the forefront of aqua animatronics.
Okay, stand by, rehearsal.
With filming in Puget Sound complete, Free Willy 2 has moved south to the Offshore Model Basin Research Facility near San Diego. Here, in a tank measuring 300 feet long, 50 feet wide, and up to 30 feet deep, underwater cameras will film the whales in their entirety for the first time. Walt and his crew are also underwater, operating waterproof joystick boxes.
It's the only way to really see what's going on underwater is to be underwater by camera. Looking through the video tap, you just don't see enough to be able to control things.
1, 2, 3, go Willy!
Control is especially important here, because teenage actors Jason James Richter and Mary Kate Shellhart, who play Willy's human friends Jesse and Nadine, must interact with the 14,000-pound animatronic orca.
Well, he's so big. He looks so real. It's pretty amazing because the way the whale, he moves and certain things he does, and just so weird because it looks just like the whale.
For Walt and the other puppeteers, the goal is to not only get the orcas from point A to point B, but to bring out each whale's unique personality.
Little Spot, this young little baby, is supposed to be uncoordinated, and so you want to instill a little more spastic and carefree kind of movements, where Willy's the more mature, and he moves with a certain kind of certainty.
And we've got it.
Director Dwight Little, assisted by executive producer and first assistant director Jim Van Wyck, is staging the movie's climax, when Willy saves Jesse amidst a fiery oil spill.
There we go. Get lower, Isaac. Lower, lower.
You have a tendency to get so focused on your work and on the fact that all of these people are involved, and you have the umbilical cords and the generators and the hydraulic pumps and all of this hardware. So when you go to dailies and all of that hardware is out and it's just the whales, that's when it reinforces, that you're doing the right thing.
Just as Buddy Gillespie and Robert Matty did before him, Walt Conti is pushing the technological envelope, helping filmmakers achieve what were previously impossible shots. When we return, green milk and walnut shells help make Willy's underwater world complete.
Come on, get there now. Ooh.
It was from Stanford University in Palo Alto, California, that Walt Conti received degrees in engineering and design. Walt's company, Edge Innovations, is located just a few miles away, and most of his employees are recent graduates. Whether with remote-controlled miniature submersibles for The Abyss, robotic rattlesnakes for Maverick, or animatronic orcas for the Free Willy films, Edge is known for bringing state-of-the-art science to Hollywood special effects.
To pull something like this off, you're talking about bringing a lot of different kinds of people together who have a passion for doing something together, and yet they have very different expertises. We have all the way from PhD electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. We have the artists and the sculptors, and then we have the machinists. Every single part of all these whales was built in this building.
Walt began his film career in 1985, when Industrial Light and Magic hired him to design miniature humpback whales for Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Now, for Free Willy 2, he is building miniature orcas to supplement his full-size killer whales. These smaller creations will be filmed during the last few weeks of production at the Los Angeles Coliseum swimming pool.
It's sort of the magic for Willy's world is his underwater world, and this is how you do it. The full scale are great for more of the top side, and we did use them for sun underwaters, but when you get to the big swimming sequences, it allows us to work in a scale that's very manageable.
Unlike the full-size whales, which required an umbilical link to an external power source, the miniatures are completely self-contained, powered by internal batteries. Walt and his crew of 16 are all certified scuba divers. They are joined underwater by the camera crew, headed by Pete Romano, one of the industry's premier underwater cinematographers.
Well, my challenge here with the whales is to try to make these 7.5-foot whales look like they're 22.5 feet, to really give them the mass and the beauty that they deserve.
One way in which the desired scale will be achieved is by shooting at a higher film speed than the standard 24 frames per second. This slows down the movement on screen, creating the illusion of greater weight and density. Of equal importance is making the swimming pool match the look of Puget Sound.
Give that a shake.
Milk mixed with green dye is used to cloud the water. And crushed walnut shells are dispersed to simulate the particulate matter common in seawater.
The hardest part of shooting these is really the visibility. To make these things look and scale, we need to cloud the water up to such a degree that we as operators can barely even see 5 feet in the water.
Today's schedule calls for shooting a sequence in which Willy, Luna, and Little Spot are trapped by an underwater net. A team of 4 is assigned to each whale. One person, designated the setter, holds the whale in its starting position before each take.
And let's roll. And net.
That person's counterpart is the retriever, who brings the whale back after cut is called. The remaining 2 puppeteer the whale, operating joysticks during filming. One puppeteer controls the tail. The other animates the head and pectoral fins. Information from the joystick box goes to the hub, where it is converted into electronic data and sent to a radio transmitter. The transmitter then broadcasts a signal to antennas above the pool. The antennas relay that signal to a receiver built into the whale, which then activates the orca's servo motors. As complicated as the science may be, the goal is for none of that to show up on screen.
These have the grace of the real whales. That was the first thing I noticed when I saw one go by underwater. It really looks like a whale. What they've done here, not many people can pull off. It's really magic.
Long before the months of filming, even before construction of the animatronic whales, Free Willy 2 began with a group of filmmakers hoping they could tell their story about orcas without using live animals.
We could not have made this movie without Walt Conte. Without his whales, which were so lifelike, we couldn't have made it. And what I like most of all is that he always operates Willy. And I like to watch him because he becomes Willy. And he has sort of the same mellow temperament.
For Walt and his team at Edge Innovations, this has been a grueling schedule. More than a year without a day off, and rarely a full night's sleep. At times, the inevitable question, is it worth it, must have crept in.
Sometimes you wonder, you ask yourself that, but eventually when you see the finished product and there's this magic that transcends the rubber and the steel and the electronics, and all of a sudden you've created out of this chunk of rubber this character, and you truly believe that and see it, then there's some magical aspect of that that keeps you hooked.
Perhaps it's the same magic that brought Robert Matty out of retirement to build the great white shark for Jaws, or the spark that triggered Buddy Gillespie's ingenious solution to the long-winded hippos. Like his predecessors, Walt Conte is freeing filmmakers, and in the process creating cinematic illusions that can only be performed by masters of movie magic.
Coming up next, swing and soar on a flying trapeze on the No Zone. Then the epic armored battles of 1967's Six-Day War on Time Traveler. Explore your world only on the Discovery Channel.